Hey, happy Mother's Day, mamas. So I'm coming to you to say this episode was recorded a while back, but I knew all along I wanted this to be kind of the Mother's Day special because the way that Caroline talks about her mom and what motivated her and inspired her to write this book, this memoir about her mom, is just so beautiful. And I also experimented a little bit with the new website and SpeakPipe and asked a bunch of you to leave messages about what motherhood means to you, any memories of your mom or what you might have learned from her, or what it's been like to really be a mom, especially this last year, and invited people in a very short window to contribute. So I would like to do more of this and just hear from you on different topics. So I think what I'm going to do is have different prompts, questions that you can respond to, and you can leave messages, whether you're a mom with or without a business. Kind of doesn't matter. It's more about really just hearing what your experiences and your perspective is, because the downside of having a podcast is it's very, very much a one-way street. It's hard to kind of close that loop. So I would love to hear from you in the future. For now, I have some voices of people, mamas, who responded with the prompts that I sent. And so they will be featured here. And I just want to say a big shout out to all of them. They're also in the show notes if you're looking for their links or their social. If you didn't quite hear it and you want to go check them out, please do. Got Heidi Wild, who's a no-nonsense shaker, baker, and magic maker. One of my good friends. Judy Giovangello. She is a grief recovery expert, and she actually has a nonprofit for parents who've lost children. There's Evelyn Gao, who is the Curious Mama. She also, I believe, has a podcast. Jocelyn Hubbard has custom teaching solutions, and Whitney Bean has intuitive life coaching, and you will hear from all of them here. I'm saying their names now because you may or may not be able to hear them on the recordings. It's not the highest quality, but I still love it, so I want to keep it going. Thanks, ladies, and without further ado, hope you are all having an amazing Mother's Day. Sending you lots and lots of love.
Hey, this is Whitney Bean. When I think of being a mom, I think about my mom and all the examples of moms that I saw around me. Something I really picked up on was, people that were genuine and natural, kind of just themselves and kind of went with the normal flow of things and really brought a lot of enjoyment and fun and light to my life. And so when I became a mom, I wanted to kind of follow that same path. I wanted to make sure that I was in flow with what my kids needed and what I needed. And I wanted to make sure that I looked out for their natural instincts and taught them what they needed. So that's what I try to do with my own business. It's created this passion to want to teach other people how to create their best selves by being a parent and by being a mom. And I really do believe that there's a way to find balance in both of those things. I am at A Tad Bit Crunchy on Instagram. I have a podcast called A Tad Bit Crunchy, or you can check out my life coaching at whitneybean.com.
What my mom taught me, well, there's so much. I will just say that moms are so special, and my mom had overcome an adversity of having polio and being in a wheelchair all of my life. She got it before I was born. So she taught me how to overcome and to work through. She drove with hand controls. She traveled the world in a wheelchair. She had a lot of different interests and creativity, and she had a really strong value system. And she was very honest and very articulate and taught me that life isn't fair, but it's good. She was also very loving. She would hold my hand and squeeze 3 times, meaning I love you. And that was pretty special. And I passed that on to my children. She also knew lots of languages and foreign languages. And she taught guitar lessons to the children in our neighborhood. when moms didn't work outside the home. That's how she was able to travel, save her money, and go to Italy and France and all these places. So we also had students in our basement in an international program from MIT and Harvard. And I got a lot of exposure to a lot of diverse people. She taught me not to look at people for the color of their skin, but for who they are. And if I judge people and not get to know them, I might be missing out on my very best friend. It would be my loss. And she also taught me to be unique and different, which I struggled with because I wanted to be like everybody else. I didn't want to stand out from the crowd.
Hey, Stephanie, thank you so much for putting together this special episode on your podcast. I think it's a really great way to honor moms, past, present, and future. My mom used to always say, "Give me my flowers while I'm still living." And I think this is a great way to do that, to show moms, I see you, I hear you, I value you. Well, let me introduce myself really quick. My name is Jocelyn Hubbard. I am a wife and mom of 5. I'm also a small business owner. I run a consulting firm called Custom Teaching Solutions, where I offer professional development and coaching to help teachers successfully navigate and adapt to cultural differences in their classroom so all students feel affirmed, welcomed, and celebrated through instruction. I'm really passionate about this work for a number of reasons, but I think mostly because I'm a mom. I have 5 kids and I see just how unique and special they are. And even though they've been raised by the same parents in the same household, there are still nuances that make them different. In the same note, having been a teacher and seeing 25 and 35 kids in a classroom, right? And just how different and unique they were. I saw the positive impact it had on them when I taught them from this place of really understanding who they were culturally and using that to design my lesson plans. So being a mom has just given me additional clarity on who I am and what I believe and what I want this world to look like for my own kids. I think that before becoming a mom, I think it would have been really great to know just how unique and special each of my own kids was going to be and how challenging it would be to parent them so that they each feel seen, but still just so amazing. So if anybody wants to reach out to me through Custom Teaching Solutions, my Instagram handle is @ITeachCustom, and I have a Facebook group called The Culture Centered Classroom.
Hi, everyone. My name is Judy Javangelo, and I just would love to just share today a little bit about my mama bear. My mom and I had a wonderful relationship overall, and I think the thing that I appreciated most about her was the message that she gave me from the time I was a young girl, which was that everything should be in moderation. And she really lived by that rule and never became addicted to anything. Both, my father and my mother's side of the family had a lot of addiction. And so that was a big speak to that Mother's Day is also National Mother's Bereavement Day. Both my mother and I lost children. I lost my son, Ben, in 2009 to suicide, and my mother lost 2 of her children, my 2 older sisters, within a couple of years after Ben. So we both had that bond, unfortunately not a very happy one, but it was great to have each other to support each other through what is the most horrific thing that can actually happen to a mother. So I just wanted to share that today on this Mother's Day to remember all those grieving mamas out there who have unfortunately lost their children, some of the most powerful and amazing women I've met in my journey as a grief recovery specialist and a founder of a nonprofit. So just a big reach out and thoughts and heart-centered love to those who have been through this journey and just to honor them on Mother's Day. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, welcome to the show, Caroline.
Thank you.
Very happy to have you. So today, I just want to let you guys know, so this is our kind of Mother's Day tribute. Wanted to bring you on because we met in a really interesting way. We can get into that. We met through social media, but if anybody knows how I feel about social media, that's even funnier. But Caroline wrote a beautiful book, which I have not read yet, and I'm excited to dig into it. But it's called Unapologetic: Tales of the Original Party Crasher. An awesome title that just totally is a nod to who your mom really was ahead of her time. So tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this tribute to your mom. Or do you think of it as a tribute, a memoir? Like what?
I do think of it as a tribute. Yeah. Well, I'd always wanted to write about her for years and years, even as a child. It's funny because I came across notebooks and my attempts to start it and questions and answers and then I'd put it away, but it was always something in the back of my mind that I wanted to do. And then when she passed, which we can talk about, it became it was something I just did. I just started to write down stories about her, and it was at first just for me. And so it's definitely, it began and it was throughout the whole process a therapeutic experience for me. And then it just became bigger and bigger than I expected. It was almost 400 pages and I was like, okay, maybe this could be something. And if it can inspire someone, great. But it was a way for me to get her stories out there and to kind of process, everything. Yeah.
Beautiful. So I'm just imagining, because I had a mom who was definitely not your run-of-the-mill mama either. So did you start thinking about this even when you were a kid? Like, did you have a recognition that your mom was different and not like all the other moms?
Absolutely. She yeah, and there's a part of you that I don't know if you felt this way. You're a little embarrassed, you think your family is the strangest family out there and everybody else is normal, and oh my God, my family's so embarrassing, Right. So there's a little bit of that, but then at the same time, there's this part of me that just loved. She was very, I can tell, she was very fabulous. She sort of, to give you an idea, she was sort of a cross between Holly Golightly from Breakfast at Tiffany's, Auntie Mame, a little bit of Moira. She dressed like Moira. She was just like sequins to the beach, to the grocery store. She always just was like glamour. And it's not that she had a lot of money. It's just, but she just had to be fabulous in some way. And so she was definitely different. She didn't, go to the PTA or teach me how to, I say this in the book, teach me how to make a bed with hospital corners or how to cook or any of that stuff. But right. She definitely taught me lessons along the way by just her being her, not by saying this is what you should do or be or whatever, but just by observing, I guess, and she was always she was like my biggest cheerleader. And so she enabled me to try, so many things without fear of failure in a way, because, she was always about experience everything you can. Try this. Okay, honey. Oh, if it work, try that, or not even her saying, try this, but like, that's kind of how I went through life. And which, we were talking earlier, I've had so many different, I feel like I reinvent myself every few years. I've done so many things in my life. And who knows, maybe subconsciously it's because of that, because of how I grew up. So
it's beautiful. Yeah. And I mean, I was struck by just the pictures on your Instagram, and you have a little bit of video on YouTube, and the glimpses of her. To me, I see this woman who's kind of in a mother role in the middle of a time when there's a very specific, maybe multiple types, but the main thing is, conforming. And she's just such a nonconformist, and as the title says, unapologetically herself. And so what I first thought was, and this could be my own bias because I was raised by a single mother, I'm like, oh, well, she was probably just like this woman who was maybe married multiple times or just whatever, but she was with the same man, your father, for how many years?
For 50 years.
That's amazing to me. Like, to me, that is kind of the icing on this whole story, because to find a man, and it sounds like he was very different from her. So tell us a little bit about him too. He sounds wonderful.
Yeah, they were absolutely complete opposites. She grew up in a large city in New York City. My dad was born in the Midwest, small town in Anderson, Indiana. I mean, they were different religions. They were different, just different personalities. But she was so, I think, she definitely, she got married later in life, for that era, for sure.
Yeah.
And she'd always told me I was having too much fun. And marriage was the last thing on my mind. She, you know, and she was used to dating celebrities and just people a little bit more like her in terms of personality. And, you know, then she met my father, who is this quiet, you know, just, you know, little crew cut, you know, I mean, but he was just, she said she loved the way he treated her mother. He was so gentlemanly. So whatever it was, opposites attracted.
Yeah.
And they were very much in love. I mean, I remember them dancing in the middle of the living room when I was a child, and she loved dance. Oh my goodness. And that was another thing too. She was a professional dancer when she was younger. And my father grew up in more of a household like Footloose, you know, so Footloose, you know, like you don't dance, you know, like, no. You know?
No bodily expression, right?
Yeah. So I think she was just a breath of I think they both were a breath of fresh air. I know she was definitely a breath of fresh air. But they both were, you know, he grounded her, and they were just a good team in that way, I think.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow. Yeah, and I just think that with the stories that you tell, and I'm sure a lot of it is about her youth, but it sounds like a lot of it was just, you know, when you were around and you watching her, you were just share that story about being on the beach with your mom as a baby.
On the beach.
The celebrity who.
Oh, how funny. Oh, that's right. When I read, okay. Well, so I was born in Hawaii. When my parents, I'll give you a little backstory. So my parents met in New York City, and then I say they slowly migrated west. You know, my brother was born in Arizona, and then, you know, my dad kind of moving up in the ranks of his career and all of that. So he accepted a position in Hawaii. They were newlyweds, and they thought, oh, well, we'll just live in Hawaii for a couple years. It'll be fun. You know, they put everything in storage. And then I found out they had things in storage for 35 years, I think.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
they just never bothered to take it out.
That's expensive storage.
No kidding. And they had a lot of stuff. And I wound up surprising them, taking it all out, like sending it to them. And I remember, this is a long answer to your question, but I remember opening up everything, and the newspaper things were wrapped in. It was like 30, 40. Yeah, it was, that was really cool for me. And I
time capsule.
A complete time capsule, like love letter, like little love notes from my mom, and pictures, and her album. She loved music, and she loved Sinatra and that whole era, and signed thing. That was amazing. So, but there's a funny stories. The next year they actually moved to the mainland. So I was like, to get everything over there, and then they brought it back. So that's just ironic and pretty funny. But to answer your question about the story on the beach. Yeah. So I grew up just crawling around on the sand in like this big bonnet, and I mean, my mother loved dressing me up like a doll. And actually, that was the first thing she said when I was born. Literally, she said, "A doll." To give you an idea of, yeah. So while like the other children were running around naked and, like whatever, just like free in Hawaii, I was like, I think the doctor, the pediatrician had to say, stop, like you live in Hawaii, for God's sake. Like she's got like, like patent leather shoes and like stockings. She's hot, like, anyway, it was funny. But so we were on the beach, and I can't even remember who was it. You probably remember it. It was
not Ava Gardner.
Ava Gardner. It was
somebody like that.
Had just taken, I mean, this is the story she said, yeah, she walked you around on the beach and then wanted to take you to Kahala Mall, which is right next to where we were, this hotel called the Kahala, which was like our second home. And that was the beach we used to go to all the time. And so, yeah, there was a mall just down the street. And to this day, I still don't get it. I mean, I tried to figure it out while I was writing. I'm like, well, was she trying to practice for a role, or did she miss her children back home? I mean, and the fact that my mother let her take me, was even more hilarious and stay back on the beach. I mean, and she was not someone that, I mean, she didn't even want people to like touch us. She was very protective. She was like,
Yeah.
I mean, and she was very, we were always with her, but I think she just had this, like, she loved Hollywood. She loves celebrities. And I think in her mind, perhaps nothing could go wrong in their presence. Yeah. Like, it's fine. She's protected by the,
celebrity kryptonite.
Yeah, it's a celebrity kryptonite force field or something. But anyway, so yeah, I was returned back unscathed. And so
just picturing somebody saying, "Can I borrow your baby?"
Borrow your baby.
An hour.
Oh, sure.
I'll get her back to you. Well, the other thing is, if it's somebody famous and you know that it's somebody, you know their name.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to be able to track them down, I guess. Yeah. Like, that might have been part of it, but it sounds like they were her weakness. That was her weak spot. That's why I said kryptonite, right? Like,
yeah.
All of the defenses are down, and she's like, "Here you go." What a great story, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There were so many of them that, you'd think, wait, what? She did what? That I just wanted to get them all out. But the Kahala was I think a saving grace for her because, like I said, she's from New York City. She was very much a New Yorker. So for her to even, they lived in Hawaii for 36 some odd years. That's a miracle in itself because there was always a part of her that, was very wistful, and just certainly wistful for, her home back in New York. And she would go back once or twice a year. So she was very resourceful with the things that we did in Hawaii. I mean, she was not, like I said, she was not your typical mother. So like, when she found this hotel, it was very glamorous. She loved like surrounding herself with like that. Like she created her own fantasy world, if you will. Yeah. I think her whole life, quite honestly. And and finding this hotel was just, there were celebrities all the time. And so I write a lot about, the sightings and the experiences that we had. It was like, again, it was like my second home, but
wow.
Yeah.
And is that, you talk later about how you kind of did like a tour of visiting spots. So share more about that. That was beautiful.
Okay. So that, when she passed away, or when she was sick, rather, I promised to take her back to all of her favorite places in New York, really. And I mean, she had a love affair with that city like no other, really. And what I did was I had her ashes and that's what I did. I took her back. Well, okay, let me back up. The funny thing actually is she didn't leave in like an after death plan. So I really didn't even know what she wanted. I had to go by something that she had said in the past in passing, really. She's like, when I die, I want my ashes scattered across Bergdorf Goodman, which Bergdorf Goodman is a high-end department store in New York City. Right. And that just kind of gives you an idea of like her, and I didn't know joking, or what, but I thought, the more I thought about it, I knew that it would be, it was perfect. It was perfect for her. Just, it set off a sojourn, if you will, like this journey that I went on with her to all of her favorite places in New York. And so, we revisited the Plaza Hotel and, of course, Bergdorf's and just all the places that she talked to me about, when I was growing up as a child. And cool because it was like I saw her the New York that she loved through her eyes, you know, just revisiting those places. So to me, it was a therapeutic experience. I'm happy to have done it. Very happy.
Caroline, I'm just trying to picture you with Ash in a restaurant, in a department store. Like, say more about how you actually did that.
It was pretty funny. So I don't know how this all, my husband was actually scheduled to be out there on a work trip. And so the timing actually worked. I mean, you know, she passed away on New Year's Day, to give you a timeline, which again, that's another thing. I was like, she loved, you know, she always loved a good party. So I said, of course she waited till New Year's.
Yeah, well, with a bang.
Bang. She did everything with a bang. So my husband, about 7, 8, 9 days later, had a work trip planned on the East Coast in New York. And so I was like, well, I'll just fly out there. And then he met me up in the city the next day. And so he wound up like coming with me, and he'd, you know, like walk a few paces behind. And, you know, I'm just like, it was all just very casual and innocent.
So was it you two, your husband and the three of you, if you include your mom?
Yeah.
Okay. So, wow. And you documented some of that?
I did. Yeah. I haven't about that yet, but I did. Yeah, I documented it. So, but I definitely wrote about it. And then, you know, it was funny, I mean, because I had written, in the act of packing up her life, I was unpacking her life. I was still learning more and more about her. You know, I had a lot of stories that had been told to me. But then when you actually literally say, pack up, you know, her belongings, for me, it was like every door I opened, every drawer I opened, every, you know, thing I unpacked or found was it's like a time capsule into her youth. And a lot of the stories sort of came to life. Like the reason I had actually called it Unapologetic Tales of the Original Party Crushers, when she was younger, she had she was in like her late, I think, teens or early 20s. She used to crash parties in New York. Like the Hollywood premiere type, you know, movie. Yeah. She was very good friends with Ron Galella, who was later dubbed. He was dubbed the original paparazzi, basically, by news.
Okay.
And he made just to kind of give you an idea, like he loved Jacqueline Onassis, and he took that picture of her walking across the street, you know, that black and white where she was in the stripe of her hair. He took that. He got his teeth punched out by Brando. Like he was incessant. But as younger, when he was just kind of starting out, you know, they were like they were like the Bonnie and Clyde of like party crashing. They kind of helped each other get in.
Right.
And she'd hide his table under his camera under the table, you know, and he'd go off, and she'd, you know, sit next to Frank Sinatra or whatever it is. I mean, so all these stories that were just, you know, dying to come out. It was just a fun time. And she actually was written up in the New York Post. And this was, they gave her a nickname. They called her Harlow. And it was originally supposed to be the title of the book, which is I'll right. Story, but I'll tell you how that changed. But yeah, they said, you know, we have a new party crasher on the scene. You know, she gets in merely by I don't know, outdressing the rest of the female guests or something like that, by looking fabulous or something. And you know, they call her Harlow because she had pale white skin. She loved, you know, Marilyn Monroe and all that era. So she like dyed her hair, you know, plaid blonde, and then she just would show up, you know, and come in. And so yeah, I originally was going to call the book Harlow, but I was talking with a girlfriend of mine who knew her. I had written about my time living in Los Angeles. I used to live in LA, and when my mom would come and visit me and whatnot. And I had told her I had written a scene about the two of them. And it's this funny scene. I used to say she had these temperature wars. She was perpetually cold. And so it's really funny. She came to visit a few times when I had this roommate, and my roommate had the heat on, and my mother would wake up and she'd like pad down the hall and then like turn it down so it was cooler, and then come back to bed. And then I'd hear like, you know, her door open up, and then she'd like go down the hall and be like, you know, turn it back. Anyway, so this happened a few times.
Yeah.
While I'm actually like kind of sweating myself going, yes, Lisa, you know, do this. Anyway, and then I think the last I heard the thermostat, like, I don't know if she like hit it hard and it fell to the ground or ripped it off the wall. I don't know, but it was, anyway, I'd written about it, and like just to let her know that I had this in the book, and we laughed, and, you know, we talked about how she was just so unapologetically herself, and she just got away with things from just being, you know, somehow. And then she stopped and she's like, oh, Caroline, that's what you have to call it. You have to call it unapologetic.
Yeah.
And, you know, at first I was like, I don't know, you know, I got a name already for it, Harlow, you know, but the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, there's something to it that completely described her. So
I love it. And I think that, you know, more of us are kind of striving to be that, because we're told, especially with social media and everything, like there's just expectations for you to be a certain way, depending on your role or your title or whatever it is. And it's just really cool to have somebody like that, and this book to kind of inspire us to kind of color outside the lines, do the unexpected, and kind of follow your urge. Like, it sounds like she was very much in touch with desire and what lit her up, and she just went for it. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, put my kids first or my husband first, and then maybe someday I'll get to it. She found a way to weave it into her life, it sounds like, and that's wonderful.
Although I will say, when she got married and she had us, I mean, we were very much her, you know, her world, that I never did not feel that. But at the same time, and this is one of the reasons why I say it was like I learned so many things by observing. It was like, yes, I knew, I mean, we were her world, and she took us everywhere. And I mean, I know we were very, very loved, but at the same time, you know, she would go to New York for, I don't know, a week or two, whatever. And yeah, I remember that I wrote about this one time. It was during Halloween. And I mean, it's like, she knows that was the best time to go. So, you know, during the fall, you know, and I feel like, oh, she's not here, you know, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I don't know if I'm making a sense, but like, because she, it was a balance. She did put herself first, but she also put us first, you know,
Right.
Yeah.
Which is very hard to do as a parent, just like, you know, that you're not supposed to be dead last, because you have to have this energy, and you don't want to be bitter towards your children.
Yeah.
So the fact that she was with a man who got it, and you guys were loved, but you also
allowed her to do her thing, she probably came back with great stories and was
Oh yeah. And
uplifted from being in her element, right?
yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, you talk about her telling stories. She loved to tell stories. She loved, and she would love like reminiscing about, these stories of like actually there was a scene that I had wrote. It was on her Anna was it was her 80th birthday. And she was talking about this time when she had met Dean Martin, or she was waiting for Dean or something like that. And or was it Frank? I'm sorry. Like sometimes it goes to, but she was like, anyway, waiting for them at a, she was like sitting at the table and she was going to be, and then, the woman that they were dating at the time, then they came down, but he was with somebody else, and she's like, oh, okay, but anyway, the fact that she would have no problem talking about this in front of my father, and that was just an example of the fact that he let her shine, and he loved her so unconditionally, and vice versa. Like, she's holding his hand across the table, like when she tells these stories. And they were so different, but they allowed each other to be themselves.
It's a beautiful level of acceptance. Seems very rare.
Yeah.
I think. But beautiful. I mean, it's goals. It's couples.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So there's good. It's just a nice, it was, not like they didn't fight, of course they had their moments, but I think also when you've been with somebody long enough, you've been with someone that long, there's a level of acceptance too. But I also, I remember as a young child, them for example, like, my father's religion was always very important to him, and my mother's religion was always very important to her. But my father's Christian, my mom was Jewish. And so, I remember going to Sunday school, and then I also remember going to Hebrew school.
Wow.
And, I was exposed to both different, both faiths. But I think that made me just be more accepting of different faiths. I believe that there's many different roads to her, right? So to God, so and to whatever universe.
Were you bat mitzvahed? Did you go through the whole thing?
I was not. My brother was bar mitzvahed.
Okay.
I was not bat mitzvahed. No. It's funny. She was like ahead of her time, but she was also kind of like, there are some like traditional, I don't know, like she was like, it's more important for the boy. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's less school for me.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. Both of those, right?
I actually spoke at my brother's bar mitzvah, which traditionally the mother, I guess, is supposed to speak. So, but I wound up saying, a whole bunch of stuff in Hebrew. I don't remember what I spoke. The congregation, and and I think that was the only time in the history of like that temple that I gave a sister small. But that's another example. It's like that's okay. I'll do it. Okay.
But what's cool about that is that one of the things that I love about the Jewish religion and that whole piece is it's giving kids a goal. It teaches them the spiritual and religious specific things that you need to learn. Also another language. But the main thing is you stand up before your people, so to speak, right? And you have a voice now. And you have a message, and it's a rite of passage, and you have to have courage, and you practice and whatever. So the fact that she allowed you up there was a way for her to give you a taste of that.
have a bat mitzvah, but I kind
Yeah,
of, I had my rite of passage.
exactly. Right. I love that. Your mom is a smart cookie.
Yeah. She got it in there somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So how old were you when that happened? Were you older than your brother or younger?
My brother is 4 years older than me. So
okay.
Younger. Yeah.
Wow. That's even more amazing. So he was 13 and you were like 9?
9. Yeah. But I was always a little bit of a ham. I loved performing, and it wasn't too scary for me. It's funny, my mother, the reason why she didn't want to get up, she was like petrified to talk in front of anyone. She's very like interesting. There are many layers to her. You would think, oh really? She loved dance though, like I said. So if she was allowed to give an interpretive dance at his bar mitzvah, she would have done that. But wow. So so I did.
That's cool. What a great story. Wow. So she was this beautiful person, and so that's what helped her get into these clubs with the photographer, and she's like on the list because she
was never on the list.
but no, she was attractive enough to get in off the list, I guess, right? So
yeah. And they were at all the like these balls, like the April in Paris ball, or whatever, the movie premiere for Taming of the Shrew, or whatever it was. Yeah. And later, when I was had to pack up her things, I came across the programs of from those days, and I stopped in my tracks, because there's a part of you that's like, I don't know, maybe it's just a story, or it just really happened.
It doesn't feel real.
And it's like, it gave me an idea of like how much she obviously treasured those memories and treasured that, because she kept those programs from her 60 years. She was in her 20s. Yeah. So, and I've had to think, like, how many moves, from New York to Arizona, from Arizona to Hawaii, then back to California,
those are her treasures. Yeah.
Treasures. Yeah.
Wow. So are those now in your possession? Are you have your own little?
Yes. Yes. I've kept so many things, probably way too many things to remember her by, but yes.
Awesome.
Wow. I even have her license plate, which is hilarious. But her license plate was blonde. So I got this. So keep her license plate.
Oh my gosh, I love it. You have like a mini shrine / museum or something.
Oh my closet, yeah.
You could have like a little traveling tour.
And I have some of her, and actually, she had a lot of, I talked about, she was always wearing like fabulous jewelry and costume, but some real, but a lot of costume, and she just had, she left, there was just so much. It was like a treasure trove to go through. And then like, she loved fashion, and so there was all of that, and obviously I couldn't keep everything, but I had given some items away to close friends, which were which kind of helped me, because then I would see if I saw them wearing it, it was almost like she was still she was like a little bit of her shared with everyone, so that was kind of helpful.
Yeah.
Weird way.
That's cool. And you're in San Diego, right?
No, I'm in Orange County.
Orange County. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just remembering I forgot what it's called. It's a women's museum. It's tiny. It's in San Diego. I was thinking they would love probably elements of that for just a little glimpse of her life would be really cool. You could probably really do something with that. Just another way to honor her. You've already honored her really well with your book and the way that what you're doing. But
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So tell me a little bit about you, because I think that for people listening, a lot of people listening, I have two podcasts, but The Audacious Life is a lot of writers, people who are, or people who want to write or want to write memoirs. And yeah, so just curious to hear about tell us a little bit about you, your background, and how you came to writing this book. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think about, I'm like, God, I just wrote a book. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
She was there, the entire way, just helping me. But I'd always wanted to write. I loved, and I still do. I love writing. And I wrote. I have journals and just some,
Yep.
books of just, from when I was literally like, I even have my very first one. How old are you when you can first write? A few years old, whatever it is, like my very first one. And there's like drawings and so I always loved expressing myself with the written word. I actually sometimes find it easier to do that. So sometimes if I have like something to say that's scary or important to talk to about something, I'll write it out first. To me, it helps me get my thoughts down and clear, and I don't know, it's just easier for me. But I always enjoyed that. But I sort of followed in my mother's footsteps when I in like the beginning years. I mean, she was a model, and so I did that, and then got into acting, and that's what brought me from Hawaii to LA. And I still do a little bit of that, but in Orange County, it's not so much. I moved down from Los Angeles to Orange County because I had started a manufacturing company. It was I was in the pet products arena. It's called Ruff and Meow. And yeah, it sounds like a law firm. The offices of Ruff and Meow.
Love it.
Pretty funny. But yeah, so we, what happened with this is I had gotten a new mattress, a new bed that was higher than my old one, and I had a little Lhasa Apso at the time, and he would used to be able to jump up onto the bed and sleep and cuddle with me and stuff, and he couldn't do it anymore with this new mattress. And I was like, oh great, he'd try and then fall off, and I was like, oh, I gotta fix this. Yeah. So I looked everywhere for a ramp or step or something to assist him up, and I couldn't find anything. And I swear at the time there was nothing on the market. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna make something. So I made a doggy step. Wow. And it was made of this sturdy foam, and it had a really cute cover on it. You could unzip it, wash it, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And friends had found out, and they're like, I'm using a bookcase and whatever, and like I'm like one of those. So I started, making them, and then I thought I've always been fairly entrepreneurial, always.
Clearly.
Or, yeah. Yeah. So I was like, well, I'm going to start a business. And then I had this idea to make like these little doggy t-shirts with sayings on it. Bitches Love Me was my first one. I'm going to give you an idea. So security, and so we had about 250 different sayings. By the time I was done, we had like you can match your dog. We had baby clothes and collars and beds and all of that. And I had it over 10 and a half years, and then I sold it. Mm-hmm. And but that's what brought me down to Orange County, because my warehouse was down here and everything was down here. And I, like I said, I always feel like I've sort of like reinvented myself every few years. I just wanted to try something new. And then when I sold it, I took a little bit of a break. I had started to I was involved with the Rotary, so I was doing a lot of volunteer work, and I wound up I also love photography, which was part of my background. And so I wound up traveling with like mobile medical units to like, oh God, we went to Peru, we went to the Amazon, we went to Mexico, and I would document, and I had a lot, they were dental clinics, most of them. And but the last one I went to was in India, and we administered polio vaccinations. And so that was just really exciting. And of course I wrote about it as well. So I would write articles for the newspaper. And so I did a lot of freelance writing and photography. And so I was doing that. So I think, you know, circuitously, I like started writing for the paper. And then, so I was like reigniting my love of writing, and then, you know, events happen in your life. And then my mother passed, and I just decided to write, you know, her story. And her passing was not, you know, it wasn't like she was sick for a long time, you know. I mean, it wasn't overnight, but she I don't know if you know, she had fallen.
Okay.
And then she just was never, she never really was you know, it's funny. She, you know, you look at her and she's tiny and whatever, but like, she wasn't healthy, you know. I mean, she loved Jello and pretzels and coffee. I mean, like, the worst diet. You know, she used to walk for miles and miles and like, you know, and dance, and very, very like active. But I think, you know, as she got older and she stopped, she was less and less active, and then her horrible diet. And anyway, so she didn't really have a healthy base, is the best I can describe it. So when you fall, you know, I mean, if something happens, you know, your body heals you. It was very, very hard for her to get past that. And then she just slowly started deteriorating, and yeah, but this happened a few months before my wedding. So she was, she made it to that. She was, you know, she always wanted to see me walk down the aisle. And I was also, you know, I waited till later in life, to, you know, to get married and settle down, like my mother, like daughter, I guess, a little bit, you know. But for me, I was focused on my career and my careers, and, you know, also just enjoying myself. And like, marriage was sort of the last thing on my mind too. Right. But I think, you know, and of course there's that element, you know, you don't want to, you know, you want to marry the right, you know, when you do it once, you want to marry the right person or whatever it is, you know. And so when I finally did, you know, it just, anyway, she loved him, and very much.
So she got to see you.
She got to see me get married. And she also, her thing was, because by that time it was very hard for her to walk, and she had to use a walker, or if not that, you know, wheelchair. And was very vain. She's always been very vain. You know, she's like, I am not, you know, using a walker to go down, you know. So we had one of my my husband's best men help her, you know, walk her down. But she was determined to dance at my wedding. And I am so grateful that I saw this, and then I have this on video, that so my mother, this is funny too. The song was all the single ladies, you know, Beyonce's all the single ladies. And this is the one she chose to dance to. It's really funny. But she, like, you know, got out of her chair, and my father led her to the dance floor, you know, and she finally got up the energy, to, not the nerve. She always wanted the energy to do it. And that, you know, and he held her while she was moving, and the whole crowd was like, oh my gosh, you know, just laid him. And
Hilarious.
and yeah, and she could really move it, you know, and it was hard for her. But I mean, I love that it's like, you know, it's one of the things that I'm so grateful that I was able to witness before she passed. You know, it's kind of like, yes, she did do that.
It's like a last great performance too.
Yeah.
Because there's a crowd and people who loved her and maybe didn't know that side of her.
Yeah, that is true.
You and your, that's really cool.
Really good way to think of it. Thank you. I'm also grateful for, you know, we had our, when she was actually admitted into hospice towards the end, because she just was, you know, there was nothing more they could shoot. Her body was sort of eating away at itself, is basically how they were describing. Like her muscles were, you know, like just eating away at itself, and she was just, it's not good. And I know I'm fast forwarding all the things in between, but we had a moment where the two of us, you know, we had a lot of just the two of us time talking about things. And there was a moment where we locked eyes, and I said, I love you. And she said, you know, I love you, you know, I know you do. And it's weird. There was nothing, we've said, I love you millions of times, you know, but it was the fact that I can't explain. It's like, she said the same thing. I love you. And I said, I know, you know, it's like when someone tells you something and it just lands in this like unshaking knowing that you received it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to try not to cry right now, but
no, I know I'm getting,
yeah, you know, it's like, I say that. And then she said, I know you do. And it was so helpful because, you know, of course, you know, you think back to all the mother-daughter fights you've had and whatever, you know, it's like, if I'm grateful that I had those words said to me, because you know, you could always wonder, right? You know, like, did she really know? Or I'm so sorry about that, or whatever it is. So it was just the best gift I could have received. Beautiful. And those were actually also the last words that I heard from her. Because, yeah, anyway.
I'm gonna cry. Remembering my mom's last.
Oh,
it's amazing when their last days, how everything just can come together in the most beautiful, surreal way. My mom fell into a coma, and I actually brought her into she was supposed to have, my mom's breast cancer moved to her brain, the meninges of her brain, and we knew that she was going to have a really difficult time when that happened. Basically, everything would start to shut down. She had a friend who talked her into getting a port put in her brain, and we, you know, her children, we were like, you know, like, that's brain surgery, and weren't sure. My brother was expecting his first child. I didn't have any kids yet, so my kids never met their grandma, but thankfully her body actually rejected that port within 24 hours, and she fell into a coma. And she had all these different people around her who were not there. It was just myself, and I have two brothers. I convinced my other brother, who wasn't going to come, who was sure she was just fine. She was going to fly out of that hospital and come home and help with this baby. I'm like, you're in denial. Got him to the hospital, and my mom was in a coma. She somehow felt us around her. She closed her eyes. Her eyes were closed, and she just said, "Hey guys, yep." And she just was like she was very silly. So she was being kind of silly. We're like, "How you doing?" She's like, "I'm okay," you know. And like, she was just being odd, but herself. She had a really quirky sense of humor. And we were just so grateful that she did this with just us. My aunt, who had been there, you know, a day or so before, wasn't there. Nobody from the outside was there. It was just us. It was for us.
Yeah.
And she said some beautiful things. And then her body started to shut down, and she fell deep into a coma, and she was in hospice in that hospital and really didn't speak to us at all after. Like, that was it. And that was like the last performance, so to speak. So
special that you were able to witness.
Yeah. I mean, it was just the fact that especially my middle brother had actually shown up, and that he was able to be there and be present and finally get it was like a huge blessing.
It's interesting how things, you're right, how things work out, especially towards the end. I mean, I remember I wasn't actually supposed to even be there until the weekend, and I said something because my father was like, "Oh, she'll be fine." I mean, she was in and out of hospitals so much towards the end.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh no, just come this weekend. She'll be out by then." And I was like, "Oh, you know," she went in on Christmas Day. I mean, it was just not the time, you know. So you have all these. I'm like, okay, well, I'm planning on coming out this weekend. You know, you sure? And anyway, as I thought about it, I said, no, I need to go out there sooner. And I'm so glad I did, because the words were spoken, I think it was the day before I was supposed to be there. So I never would have heard that. I never would have gotten that message. So, so beautiful that you were able to hear her voice before she passed. What a gift. I'm glad.
Yeah, truly, truly. And I didn't, you know, I think they give you all these, when you're the only person there. I was one of the proxies. So they were giving me all the information and the pamphlets, and this is what happens before death, and eating changes and all of that. And
what did you think about that? I didn't know. I'm like, well, why aren't they feeding her? Of course she's gonna, you know. And they say no, because there's asphyxiation, whatever, and people, you don't.
Yeah, there's all this stuff that you don't know about. And so I'm getting goosebumps just remembering all of it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I just never knew, like, end of death signals, like what was typical or whatever. My one brother was like enraged that they weren't, like, I think she ended up with septicemia. You know, you can pick up a lot of illness just being, you know, she was operated on, so her body was exposed to whatever, and her immunity was very low at that point because she was battling cancer. So it's not surprising that she picked up whatever, but he was mad about that. And then he was mad about, you know, the food thing and like care. And she, before all of that happened, one of her first days in the hospitals, I did speak to her on the phone before the port operation. She just sounded like I got scared because I thought there were weird people in the hospital, but it was really her brain. Like, she told me about people's voices at night and somebody in the hallway. And I don't know if any of it was true, but I called like that floor administrator, and I was like, my mom just told me this story about whatever. And they said, well, she has, like, her brain is affected by this. And it was one of those things, you're like, who do you want to believe? Your mother, because you love your mother. But I don't understand what's happening to the changes in her brain and how that affects how she perceives the world, right?
It
was crazy.
The surgery, or is it because she was on her way?
Well, she had cancer in her brain, which was affecting her memory, her perception of reality, her vision. Multiple things were changed because of that, because it literally was in her brain, right? And that happened very quickly. So I saw her at Thanksgiving, drove her to the hospital where she ended up dying days later, like 2 weeks later. I drove her there for them to see her and to see what to do next. And that was a big decision we made during Thanksgiving, which that was quite the Thanksgiving.
It's hard, right? You know,
Oh
when
my
things
God.
like this happen over holidays, Thanksgiving
Exactly.
or Christmas or New Year, you know, so there's always going to be that element of that memory.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you know, I'm sure people listening have lost parents or loved ones. And it's so interesting to me where I'm not someone who lives by the calendar at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a calendar rebel. And now I have 2 children. That is not good. Definitely late in life ADHD realization, all that stuff going on, right? Like I'm kind of time blind, as you know. You've probably seen, but I will find that there's just this certain heaviness that comes, and it's always around death of my mom, death of my dad, a birthday, one of their birthdays, you know, something like that. And it's not that I'm
talking, right? You said there was some, you were going through.
Well, yeah, there's some people around me now. We've just lost 3 people.
Wow.
And
but I mean, when we first started talking, you left me a voice. Yeah, you were. Was there? I'm trying to. It was like a couple weeks ago.
It was Easter, and it was Easter because Easter was like the one. Some people have Christmas, some people have Thanksgiving. There was something about Easter. It was the whole family got together, the different sets of cousins. And then I had my birthday near Easter, my grandfather and my uncle. So we would all have a shared like Easter birthday cake and all these little rituals from like even through adulthood, these Easter egg hunts on the lawn. My grandmother would like go overboard with that. And we were like 30 and she's telling us like to go look for eggs. It's just funny. And yeah, just, you know, but you don't even realize what is causing this heaviness sometimes. Next thing you know, you're in tears and you're realizing, oh, I really miss, you know, the name of the loved one who's missing, or maybe it's the group of them.
Yeah. And grief will just hit you at the craziest times. I mean, it could, and you know, any memory, anything can set it off. It does get better, right? Though, or you find that, it gets better. You're able to talk about it more and more without crying. Do you have your moments? But you know, I think it softens a little, you know.
For sure.
So,
yeah.
At least it's.
And they're around us. I mean, I think that's the thing. Like I've had so many, you know, in the beginning, you kind of wish for signs. And maybe they're not there. I started reading a lot of really interesting books about signs, which opened me up more to.
Oh, you'll have to tell me about that. I love all that. I want to.
Yeah, I'm really into all of that.
I had a lot of signs right after she passed.
Was it you talked about lights flickering and
lights flickering? Yeah, I mean, and there was one thing that I had actually written about where she, you know, okay. Do you know how, you know, right after someone passes, there's a lot of energy, and you know, okay, I gotta, you know, we gotta call these people have to come in, or, you know, planning a funeral or a celebration of life, whatever. There's a lot of, you know, and then friends are coming to your door and hugging you, you know, or sending you flowers and cards. There's this, yeah. And then one day it kind of stops, right? And so I wrote about that. Yeah, my husband had just left for the East Coast, and I was scheduled to fly out to New York. I think it was the next day, and I was you know, alone in the house, and it was the first time that it was just me, and I just like, you know, I remember walking into the kitchen and seeing all, you know, the flowers and cards and everything, and then I found what is it, the memorial book where you have people sign in and write. So I realized I hadn't read anything yet, and I was reading through, how she touched everyone, and then I came across something my brother had written, which I was just floored by, and just, oh my God. And then I just went into one of those ugly cries where, where I just like fell to the floor, and I didn't even care who heard, like what neighbors heard me. I was just like, I miss you. And then all of a sudden I heard this buzzing coming from upstairs. And, I laugh now because I'm like, this is like the perfect horror film. Why do people always go upstairs, and away from the front door? That's exactly what I did. I'm like, what's that sound? And, I go up, to find out what this is. And my electric toothbrush was dancing around on the countertop, and I like just on its own just turned itself off.
Oh my gosh.
And I just had to laugh, and I said, Mom, is this you, are you telling me to snap out of it? I don't know, whatever it was that that it did. And I just I felt that was like a sign from her, and I feel like they come through an electrical so that's why lights flickering are common. And I had a few of those moments, and my father and my brother experienced it too. And so for me, I find it comforting,
Absolutely.
so comforting. So, and actually I have a funny story. So I know you haven't read it yet, but it opens up with I had a discussion with the medium. And there's a part of you that craves just any sort of information, and are they okay, right?
Yeah.
So I'm talking with this woman that knows nothing about her but everything about her at the same time. And she's describing her perfectly, and she's saying, was your mother the life of the party? And I see her with like all these fabulous people, and she's got jewelry in her hair, and I'm like I was like, yeah, she has butterflies in her. I'm like, she used to have these butterfly pins, and just wow, crazy things. But the woman had actually Leanne had read the story after it was published, and she reached out to me, and she said, and like, I'm gonna get the chills just talking about this, but she said, I felt your mother next to me, and she was like, she said there was a moment where I stopped reading. I put it down because I wanted to spend some time, that evening with my fiance, and then get back to the book. And my mother was like, wait, you're stopping? Don't you want to hear what happens next? It was just so cute. I was like, she's like, don't you want to know what happens next? So just hearing things like that just gives me also comfort that she's okay. And and that she was happy that I wrote that's another, like, is she okay that I wrote, she loved it. She said that she loved finding out about other people. And also she loved when people wanted to know about her. And that's true. Even in the hospital, like she would talk to any nurse that she could to tell her all about, like, yes, when I was younger, I was a model or whatever. I did all this stuff. Like, she just wouldn't, she just loved telling stories about herself. And so it's fitting, I guess, that she would like that this was my story.
Oh my gosh. It's just such a beautiful way to honor her. And I told you that you really made me rethink, because I'm a trained documentary filmmaker, and I started interviewing my mom before I knew she had cancer because I grew up in a Christian commune, and we traveled and went to weird places, nowhere out of the country or anything, but we definitely have some strange stories, and she had strange people who she invited into our lives.
Yeah.
So some of it's kind of cinematic too. It's just like out there, definitely not like any of my friends ever experienced or anything. And so I wanted to interview her when I was in my 20s, and she was really shy about some of it. And some of it involves the government, so I can probably use the Freedom of Information Act or something to get some of this. But it was boring. It was the most boring interview because she was really
Holding back.
yeah, I think kind of self-conscious in a way I didn't expect, because she's definitely not typically like that. And then I thought, oh, I'll go to my older brother, because he was a really big part of one of these stories that I wanted to get. And he was the same way. And so part of me is like, okay, this isn't meant to be told this way. Maybe there's another way. And then I thought, for my kids, I would love to interview her friends who were at her side during these kind of weird times. And so you kind of reignited that spark with me. So there's one or two that are really, I think, could really fill in the blanks and whatever. And I just think it would be really fun to get their perspective. And
So I mean, you can find out so much about her through her friends. I mean, I know I did. That was one of my favorite chapters to write, when I was talking with her best friend Marilyn, and she had all these stories about their time in the Catskills and
oh wow,
trouble they got into, and I never would have known. And that's one thing, you know, I never would have talked to the people that I talked to if I wasn't, you know, if I didn't decide to venture into this journey. And even like speaking with my father, really, I mean, he was very, you know, private, and he didn't really show his emotions too much, you know, and I was starting to get to know the man behind my dad, you know.
cool.
And, you know, you hear stories about how they first met. And I mean, he remembered like details, like, she was wearing a pink knit dress. I mean, like, who remembers, you know, what, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. So it was incredible. And, you know, their song and whatever. And it was just nice to kind of connect with my father in a way that I hadn't. Just,
oh, it's beautiful.
Relatives. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to share this is every time Mother's Day rolls around or somebody has a baby and they're kind of, you know, everybody honors their moms for the most part on Mother's Day, but then there's times when they're like complaining, oh, my mother or my mother-in-law wants to do this or that, or, you know, they're not helping with the kids the right way. I'm like, you know, at least your kids know your mom. They get to spend time. You have somebody to be with them, you know, and I'm coming from a very different place, but my whole thing is we don't like to think about end of life with our parents or any of our loved ones. But if you can stop and listen and ask stories, like, this is really good encouragement to do it while they're alive, right? Yeah. Because we forget, like, I'm so close to my mom and I knew her very, very well. And I knew, you know, and I was kind of like a little adult as a kid. Like, I was her confidant. I was the youngest, but still the girl, so I hung out with the adults. Yeah. And I do know a lot about her, but it's all in my head. Like, I wrote some of it down. I was like you, I journaled from probably age 12 on, but you don't think to write down these little cool anecdotal stories. The fact that you did is super impressive. But even so, with my grandmother was really good at documenting many things about her life. She was also a dancer when she was younger. And when she died, 4 days before she died, she didn't know she was going to die. She handed me this book of pictures from her dancing days. And she was born in Germany and came over here. And it was called the Book of Hymns, HIMS. It was all of her former boyfriends before she met her grandfather.
Goodness. That's
so funny. And so she gave me that and some diaries, and she died in her sleep in the hospital right before, hours before she was going to be sent to assisted living. She said, I will never live in assisted living. I will never, ever live in assisted living. And she opted out. Like, she had congenital heart failure off and on for probably 3 years. So this was one of those episodes where they just rehydrate. They kept her overnight, but they're like, okay, she's 89. We're going to just send her. She died. And I was so proud of her. I mean, I missed her to death. Like, she was awesome. But it just shows that you have there's choice there,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well,
So I don't want to end on a somber note, but I just want to tell people, like, love your loved ones and ask more questions and try to write them down, because then when they're gone, it is harder to.
yeah, and that's what I've been told this by a few people, that it's the book has made them, think about themselves, their relationship with their family, legacy in a different way.
Yeah.
And I hope, I would love to, inspire people to connect more with their family while they're still here, and even if they can't and they've passed already, to connect with those who are still around, whether it's friends or extended family. Because it's funny, I talk with my husband, I'm like, do you know where or do you know how they met, or do you know whatever, he's like, I don't know. I don't know, like some people don't care, they don't bother, maybe it's a guy thing, I don't know, but I think something happens to you when someone does pass, and you're like, oh, if only I knew, I wish I had this or pray. So why not ask now? Why not have, they probably love, if they're anything like my mother, they would love to talk about it.
No, it's another way to honor them while they're here and really listen to these rich stories. And we're we're documenting so many things on our cameras and phones and social media, but it's always just the frosting. It's like the best photo, the best whatever. Some people capture some of the other stuff too, but I just think these real conversations that tell about who you are, if through your relatives, right? Like the background is really important. And don't leave it up to memory, because it's easy to forget.
That's so true. Well, I'm happy to have inspired you in some small way to do your documentary or get that. That's exciting. I will need to hear about it when you're done. I want to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely want to talk to her friends while they're still here. I know there's one who was kind of her wing girl, and I think she's passed. Like, that's the thing, I can't even find her. She had some mental illness too. So, but yeah, I think you definitely inspired me, whether it's a book, a video, or whatever, who knows what. So thank you so much for sharing this beautiful, beautiful story. And I want everybody to go look. So your author name is Caroline Nadine Helsing.
Yes.
The name of the book is Unapologetic: Tales of the Original Party Crasher. Yes. And so can people find this Amazon, anywhere?
Yeah, currently it's on Amazon. It's on Kindle and paperback. I just finished a large print version for us that need help with our eyeballs, or
yeah.
I just did. I'm about to embark on the Audible journey, so that's going to be fun. Yeah, I had a few requests, and that's sort of how I write anyway. I would talk out the scenes, and I have some performing in my background, so I thought this would be kind of fun project to do. So that would be in the future, but right now, it's Kindle.
Oh, that's wonderful. I actually have a friend who's battling cancer in her 80s. Literally just got her an iPad and delivered it yesterday for Audible. Loves reading, and her eyesight is not so great. So Audible is
Audible's fun. You just awesome. I'll listen to it while I'm doing the dishes or walking or whatever. At the same time, there's something about holding a book, and I love it both.
I like both.
The tangible, the flipping of the page,
exactly.
So that's fun. But you can find out more on my site at carolinenadinehelsing.com. And then as you mentioned on the socials, I didn't put any photos in the book, but there are a ton of pictures that I try and post something daily, with like a excerpt from the book and little tidbits on, my childhood or, my mother's, our time together. And I make it fun. And so people have been saying, wow, this is really cool accompaniment to your book. I'm reading the book and then I'm looking,
Fun.
social, I see the photos. So I'm like, oh, that's nice to hear.
You're doing a great job. Yeah, no, I worked with a lot of authors before this doing like social media and strategy type stuff. And I love that you're doing that because you're kind of keeping the story alive and pulling people back. And
it's helpful for me too. That was one of the things. I'm like, God, what do I do when I'm done writing her story? It's like, when you're writing, they're still with you, right? And so it was like my happy, safe, happy place that my mother's still here because she's still in my mind. And how is it going to be when I'm done? And it has been nonstop, and I'm still thinking of things, and I'll put that on social or. But now just talking to other people about it is so nice, and to get feedback has been so nice. Just the feedback on how it's touched people it's heartwarming. It made me, it solidified the fact that my writing the story there was a reason to do it. If I've touched other people, then it's all for the better. So
I love it. Never have to be done. You can just keep adding to it, and you can maybe have people send you their stories about their mom. I mean, who knows what it'll turn into, right? Yeah, you're inspiring a lot of us. So. Sounds very cathartic and an awesome way to honor her and inspire the rest of us. So thank you so much, Caroline. Appreciate your time. All right, well, we'll go look for your book, and I'll have all of your socials and your website in the show notes for everybody to go take a look.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Sure. Bye.